Rest of these are going to be a little bit more freeform, just things I did on my holidays. There will be photos to come once I've got them off the camera, so that'll be its own separate video. But anyway, just to give you an idea of the itinerary that we followed, though not necessarily the timescales, we arrived in Tokyo, down here. Then we moved over to Matsumoto, which is somewhere in the region of Nagano. Then we headed on down to Kyoto, I believe. So Matsumoto, Kyoto, then we moved over to Hiroshima, down here. And then we moved back across to Osaka. And that's a bit of a simplification of what we did. We went to a few other places on day trips as we went, but they're kind of the key areas. So I'm going to break the videos down into each of those areas. So, the journey starts in Manchester Airport, and it probably starts with me dropping my phone down the toilet. This was an issue because they recommend that when you're coming over to the country, you fill out your details on an app called MySOS, which allows you to tell them things like, I have a full vaccination record, and I have not been in contact with anybody who's contracted coronavirus in the past X number of weeks. So, that made things a little bit difficult when going through the initial control areas, because they were expecting me to have my paperwork, and I didn't. I will say, if you don't have the app, if you don't have a phone or anything like that, not that much of an issue, but you may have to fill out some paperwork when you get to the other side. So you get the app to go through a fast track process. You just provide them with a QR code, and then they just say, yes, that's fine, and then they wave you through. I would say that I probably added about half an hour onto the experience, just because we had to go through that process. It wasn't too bad. It was time that we could have spent better. Whatever. I didn't have an awful lot of choice. I had just accidentally destroyed my phone. And what else? We went from Manchester Airport directly to Dubai, flying economy. First plane was fine. There was enough room. It wasn't too bad. Watched a couple of movies. Dubai Airport, we were only there for maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's not enough time to see anything. And honestly, I'm not really that fussed for wandering around an airport. The only thing I really had to say of any note around Dubai Airport was that water out of the fountains was hot, which was something that I'm not familiar with. But we got a coffee, we got a snack, whatever. The next plane, I believe, was a 777, both of which, both the planes on the way in were through Emirates. The 777s are not large aeroplanes. It was decidedly cramped. I wasn't going to get any sleep anyway, because I generally don't sleep on planes anyway, so not much of an issue really, although there are more comfortable ways of spending several hours of your life. But at least they had movies, it was fine. And we touched down in Tokyo Narita Airport around about 7 p.m. And it was a ghost town. Absolutely no one around whatsoever, apart from members of staff who were just stood around waiting to welcome us, which is one thing that you will find in Japan, that you'll get people that are literally employed to stand and either direct you or make sure that you're aware of something, or in many cases just to greet you and make sure that you're doing okay. There are people who seem to be employed to perform what we would use a sign for in the UK. This isn't any kind of dig at how they operate, and it's actually beneficial, because many has been the time over in this country that there has been a sign that's told me to do something and I simply haven't noticed that it's there. But having a person there to tell you that, don't walk on the grass, make sure you take your shoes off, anything like that, really kind of useful sometimes. But yeah, the staff were helpful, they were friendly. I'll say, while you may expect a high level of English fluency in an airport, don't expect native fluency. Be prepared to have to take things slowly and carefully, because, I mean, it's not their native language. There is a world of difference between Japanese and English. It's difficult to learn one if you've learnt the other. They're different styles of language, so just Be patient. They will be patient. You should also expect to have to be patient, and you will work it out. Um, Gestures will get you a long way. If not, then try to keep sentences to one or two basic words. Um, but honestly, you will work things out. And in hotels and airports, fluency is a little better than most places. In fact, in some places, significantly better. We met one or two people in hotels that were really quite fluent and were very helpful. Like I said, we did make an effort to learn some of the language before we went, but it was a much larger undertaking than I think any of us could have predicted. But we did make an effort at least, which was something, right? Anyway, um, oh yeah, I did have a bit of an issue going through Manchester Airport in that something about my knee set off the security scanner. I remember being sat in a chair and this chap comes towards me, very carefully putting on a blue latex glove. And I did rather wonder for a second whether or not I was about to have a life experience, but thankfully I think he just asked me a couple of questions and gave me a pat down, and it was all fine. But anyway, we arrived. We got through the security. We were picked up by a driver who'd been assigned to us and taken along very familiar-looking motorways. I mean, everyone drives on the left there anyway, but things looked just quite familiar. And just through a bit of a rainy afternoon, a rainy evening, and directly into Tokyo. It wasn't as much of a just neon wonderland as you might see in the photos, but it is still very. Can't really appreciate it unless you've physically seen it. You know, it's not like anything I've seen before. It's very bright, very energetic, very lively. It's the kind of place I really like. We had four people in the party: myself, my wife, father-in-law, sister-in-law. Um, I feel like my wife and father-in-law were very much there for the sort of the culture, the history, the museums and things like that. And myself and the sister-in-law were there for the places, the people, and the sort of the nightlife kind of stuff. So we had a decent mix of interests, and we had a decent mix of that expressed in the itinerary. So actually, it was about as good a balance as you could hope to achieve. So it actually worked out rather well. But we got into the hotel, must have been gone 8:30, about 9 o'clock. Felt pretty well adjusted to the time zone difference actually, because there's 8 hours difference. So we've been travelling a fair while. Still felt pretty fresh. It might have been adrenaline from oh my god, we're finally here, because we've been planning this trip for 3 years at least. So yeah, went out, popped to a combini, had a bit of a look around the local area, and that was pretty much it for day one. So then day two, we picked up with we had a guided tour of some parts of Tokyo. A particularly lovely lady. The tourism trade has just opened up over there, so she was just starting to get back into steady work. But really knowledgeable, and had a lot to say about all the places we went to. Definitely knew the kinds of places that tourists would like to see. So we went to the Tsukiji fish market, which used to be in a different venue. It's moved recently. It's a different beast now, from what I've heard. But it's still pretty impressive. Um, I'm glad that mask adoption masks were required, because there was an awful lot of just like fresh fish knocking around there, and I'm not sure what the smell was like. I mean, it shouldn't have been too bad if it was fresh fish, but still, we just had a lot of wandering around little shops, little snack bars and things. Just having a look at just the raw in guts of Tokyo. Picked up a couple of souvenirs. Just city tourism stuff, the kind of stuff that you do on the first day. Went to a park. One thing is that parks, especially in large population centres, have a entry fee, but they are very nicely maintained, and they have a couple of attractions that you can go and see. Usually, a lot of like information signage around to sort of tell you about the history of the area and stuff. So it's more of a cultural experience than just going to a green space for a nice walk. And it is a nice walk, and they tend to have their own like little like wildlife as well, which is nice. It's worth seeing. Sometimes they have fish in ponds, things like that. So they're worth seeing. And the price isn't usually expensive either. I mean, I don't think we had an expensive one. But this particular park that we went to on that day had a hawking ground, or it used to be a hawking ground, and there was an awful lot of information about how they'd have like decoy ducks that lived there that were used as bait to lure wild ducks in, so they could use them for like sport for the hawk hunting, which is apparently a big thing back in the day. Give you a bit of information about how they used to go about like training them and stuff, and it was all real interesting. We went to Shibuya real briefly. I'm a massive fan of it. It's purely because I'm a really big fan of The World Ends With You, the um, the original and the sequel on the Switch, and I've played them to the extent that when we arrived in Shibuya, I was able to actually pick out parts of the town based on locations in the game. They were just immediately familiar. Like we got at the west exit bus terminal, and I knew there would be a Moai head, and there was one right there, and you could pick out the iconic little set pieces. It was just immediately sort of right. It was really interesting to have that experience. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Um, then we nipped over to Akihabara, Electric Town. It's a neon hellscape. Frankly, it really, really different pace of life over there, and there's people just wandering around in cosplay all over the place. There's music and there's lights and there's sounds and there's smells and it's an assault on the senses. But I absolutely loved it. I would have enjoyed it more, I think, if it hadn't been the end of the day, because I was starting to get pretty tired because the days while we were there were pretty full on. We ran into I think we ran into a guy at one point that we just seemed to be standing in front of a map and trying to work out the way to go. This was after the guide had left, and just pulled up on his bicycle and offered to actually like help us get around. I really cannot overstate how helpful just the general public will be if you look like you need some assistance. People will really go out of their way to just give you a hand, and they're really kind about it. They don't want anything in return. Like folk are just really genuinely decent over there. Well, I mean, the folk that are confident enough in talking to you are anyway. I mean, hell, I was at a train station waiting for we were taking a toilet break, and just my feet were hurting, so I just thought I'll just have a bit of a sit down for a second. There's no benches or anything, but I just sit on the floor with the bags while everyone comes out. And this woman comes like running up to me and they're saying, are you okay? And I'm trying to convey to her like, I'm okay. I'm just a bit tired. It's fine. And she's saying, well, do you need a bottle of water? And I'm like, you would actually buy me a bottle of water because you think I'm in distress, wouldn't you? And like, just over here, I just wouldn't expect that kind of treatment from someone I'd never even met. It also taught me that just don't sit on the floor because people think you're ill. I mean, it's not that common over here either, but I don't have much of a sense of decorum, quite frankly. But anyways, what else was there? We went to a shrine. I've forgotten the name of it. It is a very particularly famous one that's in the Tokyo area, though. It might have been Fushimi Inari actually, but I'm not absolutely certain about it. I'd know it if I looked it up. But it was she explained the significance of the shrine and the torii gates and all the rest of that stuff. We and it was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was in the middle of a wooded area, even in the middle of the city. The shrines have a particular way of being in a little oasis of calm in the middle of the chaos of being in a city. And it was beautiful. There were just birds around. There was a lot of like sightseeing stuff to take in. The big collection of decorated sake barrels. And the actual grounds in the shrine were absolutely spectacular. Um, it almost ruined shrines for me actually because it was quite I don't know, nothing really came quite close to the two shrines that we saw on the first 2 days in Tokyo. And yeah, she was explaining the history as we went, and all kinds of stuff. Really good experience. Um, no, sorry, no. The first shrine we saw and the first temple we saw, they may have ruined both experiences to come, because they were really, it was a really high bar. Um, then we decided to go to an izakaya for dinner, and we're sat there and we're trying to translate the menu, not doing particularly well with it. We've ordered drinks and we're just trying to work out what food we can actually, get off this menu. And this chap comes up to us and speaks American accents in English pretty fluently. And it obviously seeing that we were new, and he was saying, well, kind of make some recommendations. Like, yes, absolutely, of course you can. And he was saying, well, like I recommend you have one of these, a couple of these, da, 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 da. And then he just calls away, calls the staff over, and like, can these people have da, 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 da. And we're saying, well, can we buy you a drink or something? But he seemed to be trying to have this like pay it forward mentality. He was saying that someone had done some kind of kindness to him, and he wanted to, whatever. And so we got a fair like spread of food, just ordered off the kindness of someone else who was just willing to lend us a hand. I mean, he didn't pay or anything, and Lord knows we wouldn't have expected him to. But the fact that someone came over and like, you're having trouble ordering food, let me help you, really cool, really nice of him. Um, he did order us an entire fish head, which we weren't sure if we were supposed to eat, and we chose not to. It turns out that we probably were supposed to eat that, and it would have been okay, you know. I did notice though that as soon as we got into the izakaya, they were playing Genesis on the radio, and like, oh yeah, great, I'm home, love it. uh, Next day, we went to Sensoji Temple, which again, enormous, absolutely spectacular. Look up pictures of it. The pictures, it looks like the pictures, except you're there in person. It's way more. We went there twice, once by day, once by night, and equally beautiful either way. There was another bit of a ceremony going on there. I'll say that if you can get to a temple or a shrine and they're performing a ceremony, they'll always advise that you don't take pictures, please, and that's fine. But if they're playing like the actual like the traditional drums, it just sounds so like I am in this country now. This is what this should sound like. It just felt so. I don't want to say authentic because that feels really patronising, but it really sounded authentic. It's like if you come to the UK for the first time and you're the present for the changing of the guard outside of Buckingham Palace and like, oh, yep, this is the UK. It's probably a bit like that. I mean, I wouldn't know because I don't think I've ever seen them do that, but I get the gist. Um, we did have one guy come up to us actually, and he just says he just comes up to us and very solemnly says, "You are welcome in Japan." And I'm like, that's actually quite comforting because I thought that people would be really nervous about us being here. And then he says, "Do you have any foreign money?" And we're like, "Oh, hang on, what's going on here?" And he seemed to be saying he collected foreign currency and brought out this wallet. And there was rather a lot of just notes from all kinds of different countries. And I think he just has an extreme interest in foreign tourists and different countries and cultures and stuff. It didn't come across like he was begging for cash or anything, because I mean, we didn't give him enough. We gave him a fiver. My father-in-law gave him a fiver because he was the only one of us that still had any GBP on hand. But it wasn't really enough to like exchange into anything meaningful. But yeah, that's kind of all he was after, was just money. Like just to collect. It was strange, but I didn't really get a bad vibe from him. Um, if you go to temples and shrines, you can do a thing where you can purchase a book, and if you pay a nominal fee, it's quite low. It's about 300 yen generally. You can hand it to someone who will generally be wearing like traditional like shrine maiden garb, or like priest robes or whatever, depending on who's operating the booth. And they will take your book for a moment, and when they hand it back, it will have a stamp, which is like every temple and shrine has its own stamp. And the majority of them will also do you a. They will also write like very elegant, very beautiful calligraphy over the stamp as well. and it's like this little collectible piece. You can like it's just a way of sort of saying like I have been to this shrine and his this is like I think it might be like a blessing or something. Not absolutely sure, but the books they give you, you can kind of like unfold them as well, so it's like a big long concertina of paper, and it gives you like this nice presentation piece as well, and they're really they're quite they're quite beautiful little articles just in their own right. Um, so my wife started up a collection of them actually, just trying to fill a book with as many different places as she could. The only thing is that some shrines will not fill out a book if it has temple stamps in it, and vice versa. So you may need to keep two books on the go. Um, we went to an earthquake and fire memorial, which had a instructional video inside, which told us about the effects of the bombings in the Second World War and how it burnt quite a sizable chunk of Japan to the ground and killed many, many people. And walked out of there feeling like a bit of a heel, actually, even though I wasn't personally involved. I mean, but still, just cultural guilt, I think. I mean, I know it wasn't the UK that was doing the bombings, but it's hard not to feel a little responsible considering that we were on that side. I mean, as like a union of nations, we were all in a way somewhat responsible. But this is me talking about my white guilt. So, um, but it was incredibly humbling, and it was quite a beautiful place as well. I mean, most places over there were, and most places that were memorials and museums and other places such like were quite beautiful and very just educational, but interesting. We took a trip to Don Quixote, the famous chain of department stores. Um, that is also just neon bedlam. Multiple stories, and there'll be a legend on the wall that explains what each story is for. But when you get up there, it is just a chaotic collection of products, just shelf after shelf of loosely grouped items. We went shopping for just to have a bit of a look around mostly, but we got some sweets for souvenirs to take back. Incidentally, if you go to Don Quixote, they definitely do tax free, but they usually have a special counter for it. Um, but the staff are usually pretty good about as saying, do you want tax free? Which is how we found out about the tax free process in the first place. Was that they just told us, yeah, you don't have to pay full price for this, provided you don't eat it here. So yeah, but they'll bag up all your stuff for you. They put tax free stickers over it. It's all fine. Um, but went shopping there on one of the days because I wanted to get a cheap pair of headphones. And so confusing is the layout of the place that I started walking towards what phone accessories. And I'm like, I might find headphones down here. And next thing I know, I'm in front of like an array of vibrators. I'm like, oh, so I don't know if I took a wrong turning here, if it's just a bit confusing. But yeah, they have almost everything, but it is cheap. It's worth looking at. Definitely worth looking at. Very confusing though. And also saw my first signs for model cafes. So they have a variety of styles of cafes and bars, which are staffed almost exclusively by attractive young women. Got to stress, we didn't actually go to any. I mean, we had myself, who's married, my wife, who's married to me, and my sister-in-law, and my father-in-law. So we're not particularly looking for female company, but it's not in the sense that you would expect it to exist. Not every type of establishment does the same thing. I gather though that a lot of them just have attractive women behind the bar. You pay a fee to enter, and you pay a fee per hour to stay there. You buy drinks, you may be encouraged to buy the girls' drinks, but they will just, you know, talk to you. You're paying a fee for an attractive woman to pay attention to you for a while. And it's not the kind of thing I would do personally, but being as someone who has, a tendency towards social awkwardness and difficulty with meeting people, Um, Being in an environment where in Japan people generally do work very long hours and have less time than you would expect for social situations and gatherings and that, the prospect of just being able to go to a place where you know that someone will be attractive and friendly and willing to have a short conversation with you, I mean, it's maybe that I can see the appeal of it. Um, it's I don't think it would work over here. I think it needs to be part of a different culture for it to make sense. But I kind of get it, and I think I get the vibe that they're a little bit more of an innocent thing because there's definitely like no touching and no anything else goes on, but it's a bit less of a seedy thing than it would probably be if it existed over here. Although I think there are establishments that are a bit more like that. And I mean, I think we were staying for the first part in a red light district, but then they call it a red light district, but it would be better to understand it as just a general entertainment sector. Like it means a slightly different thing there. Although I did see a sign for Soapland at one point, and I'm pretty sure I know what that is, and I'm pretty sure it's what I think it is. I didn't go there either. Um, so I think the closest we came to engaging in anything like that was I think there was just a person stood outside of a venue, just kind of stood there to try to attract people in, and that's genuinely about as close as we got, and that's fine. Um, so what else? Day four, sat down, ordered breakfast, sat down for breakfast. The breakfast that came out was not the one that I ordered, and I'm thinking, well, okay, fair enough. I did try to actually pronounce my breakfast that morning rather than just pointing at the menu. Might have been a bit of a misunderstanding. Completely understandable, and honestly, I liked everything on the menu anyway, so if there's been a slight mistake, really not a big deal. Not going to kick up a fuss about it. It turns out that she had actually got the right order for me, and she delivered me someone else's breakfast, so when she came round when I'd half finished, she'd brought out a second breakfast, and I'm looking at her and I'm trying to explain, yeah, that's the one I ordered, and this is the one that came out. She apologised with a horror and sincerity that one would normally reserve for having to explain to someone that you've run over their child. And then she gave me the second breakfast anyway, and then the chef came out to the person who'd ordered the breakfast I'd just eaten to apologise to him personally. And the entire time, I was saying to the rest of the family, like, just go up to a hotel room because I'm going to be a while eating breakfast number two, while I'm just waiting for a hole in the ground to swallow me up. I apologised on the way out. That's about all I could do. Mm. Um, Beatles, the Beatles, all over the place over there. Like you'll just hear Beatles music where you really wouldn't expect to hear it. There was a guy in a park that we went to who was just playing panpipes. That had been, I won't say busking, but public performing. Just playing Obla Di Obla Da. Not what I thought I'd hear in Japan, but they love them over there. Like John Lennon, real big over there, for probably fairly obvious reasons. I mean, he did marry Yoko Ono, but yeah, I've got a letter written in my notes actually. The Beatles over there might be the one most uniting, universal cultural artifact that we all share. Um, there we went to the Tokyo National Museum. A lot of stuff to look at in there. I'll say the one thing that I took back with me from that is that there's a particular kind of sword. Let me just pull this up actually. Tashi, I think it was. Or Tachi, pardon me, I can't read my own handwriting. What I believe they were saying on the information placard was that Tachi tend to be longer than katanas, which rather makes me wonder why katanas are the typical like nerd sword of choice. Apart from like a LARP weapon. But um, but yeah, the I would have thought that if we were going to go for like the nerd approved sword, it would have been the longer, like the one that's entirely more swordy. But I think they were saying that was it katanas are typically associated with mounted combat, and Tachi and Morphe are like your footmen, like on the ground, like your soldiers, your whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's an association with samurai culture. Maybe I didn't understand the blackouts properly. I don't know. Um, so I've got a note down here that says that Asahi, the drinks manufacturer, seems to make everything. You'll see Asahi branding all over the place. Um, we had a conversation with someone who spoke a bit of English. I might be thinking of the guide actually. They have a concept. I don't know if it's uniquely Japanese, but I believe it's called active listening, where whilever someone's having a conversation with you over there, you will notice that if you're having like in a shared language, they will do an awful lot of like enthusiastic nodding and an awful lot of like affirmative affirming statements like yes, yes, I understand, or I see, or is that so, and stuff like that. And it's just part of it's part of their the polite conversation style there, that they are they're expressing that I am engaged with what you're saying and I'm listening and I'm receiving it. Having someone do that to in English feels a little strange. um, I mean, it's different. It's not well, strange might not be the right word, but it's unusual. I heard my first British person there. It was a person who was, I think he was talking to a tour guide when we were in the lift together, and he was what was he saying? I used to be a paramedic, and now I'm just paralytic, and I'm like, haha, I get that, yeah, yeah, you're one of us, aren't you? So what else? They do ice lollies and ice creams in vending machines. If you can find yourself a Coolish, it's just like a ice cream in like a squeezy cup thing. They're quite nice. But yeah, ice lollies. We found caffeinated ice lollies. Never tried one. Kind of regret it actually. Um, we happened upon a temple that had Wi-Fi. That was interesting. And unexpectedly wandered into some kind of festival at one point around Tokyo. So if you get a chance to participate in one, or at least to watch one, definitely worth it, because it's a real big slice of Japanese life. They love a festival. Then we took a little boat out to forget where we went really. Just kind of looking around Tokyo, and I think it was one of the free days that we had, so we were just doing a bit of sightseeing all over the place really. Um, we got on the boat at the same time as a school trip, and we sat ourselves down at like towards the front of the boat, and then the teachers started filing all the kids in, and we had a group of kids on the bench right in front of us, and so a couple of them were just properly giving us the side eye, and I'm like, yeah, I get it, it's fine, and one of them just looks me like right in the eyes, and I sort of look back at him, and like bowing is big over there. Like it's like an acknowledgement thing. It's a polite thing, but like typically, if you buy something from someone, you'll just you'll bow and it's fine. And there's different depths of bow to indicate how how much gratitude you're expressing or how polite you're attempting to be. But if you're in a shop setting, just a slight which lends itself quite well to the standard northern British like nod of acknowledgement. Like you're right. I see you, I know you, whatever. And so I looked this kid in the eye as he's looking me back in the eye, and I'm like, and he did the same thing, sort of warily, and I'm like, I've done it. I've breached the cultural barrier. We understand each other. This is like, this is like just a greeting. And I'm like, yeah, all right. Felt really good about it. And then well, we're going on this boat. There's like a bit of a tourist track playing, explaining, there's buildings over here, over here. This is what they're for, whatever. And kids are filling out information worksheets, like you do when you're 6 years old and you get your like, I'm on a school trip and I've got to fill out my worksheet to say, like where did I go, what did I learn and stuff. And can you draw this building, that kind of thing. But kids are filing off the boat, and I thought I'd push my luck, and this kid looks at me again, and and he was like, I'm like, yes, yes, we're in. We are in. Done it. I've greeted someone and they return my greeting. And it might be creepy because he's like 7 years old, but I don't care. We've done it. Never saw that kid again. Real bad about it. Would have been weird. Um, so then, one thing I did note actually is that adults can be a bit wary of outside of foreigners. Call it what it is, foreigners. Kids don't seem that worried about it. and I mean, I think it's just that at a certain age, you just generally don't see differences in people as much. I mean, as you get older and you find your tribe that you belong to, it's quite easy to identify that this person's different, and it's not bad. It's perfectly natural for people to congregate with their own kind, and or to identify with their own kind. It's human behaviour. We group together in like batches, if you like. But yeah, this I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot. Because I didn't have my phone on me, I listen to music pretty constantly. I mean, I've always got earbuds in to the point where I think I'm suffering a minor amount of hearing loss. But with no music on hand, I've had the same songs in my head for the entire 3 weeks. So yeah, just Big Shot by Toby Fox constantly rattling around in my head. Millennium Anthem by J. Tholen rattling around in my head. The theme to Neon Genesis Evangelion rattling around in my head. Still is. Bit problematic. Um, I will state, by the way, personally interested in Japanese culture. Not why I went. Well, part of why. Sorry, that's why I went, and that and that we were organising a trip anyway, and I'm like, yeah, I'll tag along with this. But I'm not really a massive anime guy. I've seen a few, but not not a tremendous amount. It's mostly old stuff. Um, so I didn't really go over with that kind of grounding. I'd learnt some cultural stuff. I just wanted to see the country and its people, though. So I didn't really go over and like, I am absolutely going to Akihabara and I'm going to buy all of the figurines and all of the, I'm going to buy an entire JoJo's Bizarre Adventure box set and all of that stuff. Wasn't really going there for that. I mean, I'm a video game guy, and it's good for that. But you know, um, so what else? What else? What else? What else? We went to a small park, had a couple of islands in it with like little bridges to traverse them. Saw a crane for the first time in my life and got some pretty good pictures of it. I think that had a koi pond as well, and that was kind of cool. It might have just been a river with some koi in it. Um, and also, uh, office buildings. Just like if you've seen big office buildings, sure, but everything in Japan is up here. Everything in the cities because there's so little room, but there's so much that they're getting done. So many people, there's so many industries. You just got to go up. I mean, when we went for lunch on the day with the guide, and I think we went up about 47 stories in an office building just to get to where there was like a food court layer at the top, and with like a few restaurants. And like, it's ludicrous. It's amazing. Um, and then finally for Tokyo, I wrote down here that having a 500 yen coin, because it's a coin, doesn't feel like it's a vast amount of money, even though it's something akin to about £3. It's not the kind of money that you would, be happy to lose, but it doesn't feel like money because it's a coin. Um, Getting to Japan, real expensive, but once you're over there, unless you're looking for really premium goods, yeah, things just generally are kind of cheap. We found travel's cheap, eating out's cheap, drinks tend to be fairly cheap. Um, yeah, it's not bad, really not bad. Um, the last day was the day that we were on the subway and saw the bubble bath sponsored car. It was advertising itself as ASMR Bubble Bath, which raises a variety of interesting and thought-provoking questions. Um, we travelled to the Imperial Garden, which was again gorgeous. I did note that if you go to the UK and you go through parks, you will see just dirt paths going through grassy areas where people have just followed people back and forth and just made their own path by walking over the grass. Japan, no. Every path is very deliberately laid out and it's very neat. People just do not walk where they're not supposed to walk, and everything is neat and orderly and quite beautiful because of it. Um, Imperial Garden had plenty of information about the the garrisons that they had for troops and the general area and the history of it. Uh, this is where I wrote down if it looks like a juice, it might be tea. I got a container of hot corn soup from a vending machine, which was a very strange experience. We found our first gashapon machines here. Uh, we got a bit of a taste for them, actually. We got one or two odds and ends. So I know my father-in-law probably got more than any of us. He seemed to be really enjoying himself. The only thing I really got for myself was I found a Dragon Quest machine and got myself a wee little Platinum King Slime pencil topper. And it's pretty neat, actually. I think he might be rare as well, I'm not sure. I was quite pleased with him. Uh, so we found our first proper Studio Ghibli store. It was in a train in a station, I think. They're so charming. They are really charming. Um, went back to Shibuya and got to the Scramble Crossing, which I believe, if I have a look through here, got myself a little photo over here of this is Hachiko, which is sort of the Japanese equivalent of Greyfriars Bobby in a sense. There's this whole story about a dog who, like his master, just didn't return home from work one day, and the dog would typically go to the station to meet him every single day, and it just continued to go to the station every day until the day it died, kind of thing. And it's one of those like, this is this expresses the love of dogs for their owners and their loyalty and all the rest of that. I mean, I mostly, again, I went there because it's a major landmark in the world from the World Ends with You, and I wanted to go and actually see it in person, and I was absolutely thrilled. We got there in the evening. Scramble Crossing was absolutely packed. It really did not disappoint at all, and just being in the thick of all of just that raw, seething humanity really, really gets me going. I think I might have slight extrovert tendencies. Like I need to be around a lot of people every once in a while just to sort of recharge something. And yeah, felt real good there. Also, got to see the Konami building. It was just an office building, really not that interesting. There's not an awful lot going on there at all. Um, I don't know if there was anything else really worth demonstrating in Tokyo, although I think that was where I went and got the most dubious looking melon soda. Sent that one through to my mother. I think she probably thought it was alcoholic. It wasn't. Very tasty though. And that was the majority of what we did in Tokyo. The only other things to mention is that if you're between the ages of 16 and 40 in Tokyo, and you're out in the streets or you're on TV, you are on, and you are on 24 hours a day. You're out there, you're living life, you are looking like you're living life. You might be wearing a costume, you might have like neon coloured hair, you might be wearing like 6-inch platform heels and just walking around and eating okonomiyaki, but you are absolutely just living that moment because there is just a culture of just supreme, unending vitality among those people. Um, and also, this may be aging me a little, but once people reach the age of 16 over there, I was almost incapable of discerning how old they were until they got to maybe the age of 40 or 50. They just. That's how other people are kids, teenagers, 20 somethings, or what. So, felt real weird about that occasionally. But no, overall, Tokyo, loved it. Really loved it. Tokyo and Osaka, they were my places. But again, Tokyo, major cities, Japan ain't that. They are, it's a place in Japan and it's an experience, but I don't think it's your typical slice of Japanese life. So bear that in mind. And again, if you're going to go there, don't go exclusively to one city if you can help it, because you'll just have such a small view of the overall whole. So I'll move on.